A grizzly bear locked eyes with a hunter, held the stare for a long moment, then turned and walked away. Not in panic, not startled, just gone, like it made a decision. That's not a campfire story. That's a documented field observation. And it raises a question researchers have been quietly wrestling with for decades. Can wild animals actually tell when a human is dangerous before anything dangerous happens? To a wild animal, you are not a neutral presence. You never have been. Humans are, evolutionarily speaking, the most effective predators this planet has ever produced. We don't have claws, we don't have speed, but we wiped out entire megafauna populations across multiple continents. Animals that survived did so in part because they learned through generations of genetic selection to be afraid of us. That fear is not random. It's calibrated, and the calibration goes far deeper than most people realize. There's a concept in wildlife biology called the flight initiation distance. It's the point at which an animal decides to run. What's strange is that this distance isn't fixed. It changes based on context. A deer near a hiking trail in a national park will let a human get considerably closer than the same species in a region with active hunting. Same animal, same instincts, different learned association. Researchers at the University of California documented this directly, comparing ungulate behavior across protected and hunted zones. The animals in hunted areas weren't just more skittish, they were more accurate. They were reading cues that the protected animals had essentially stopped tracking. What cues exactly? Approach angle, gaze direction, body posture, and the speed and rhythm of movement. Animals are processing a continuous stream of behavioral data from the moment a human enters their awareness. A direct approach reads as predatory. An angled, indirect one reads as something else, neutral, or, at minimum, non-threatening. Hunters have understood this intuitively for centuries. Researchers are now mapping it neurologically. The olfactory component is even more striking. Human emotional states produce detectable chemical signals. Fear, aggression, and calm each produce a different hormonal profile. Cortisol, adrenaline, and their metabolites that are released through sweat and breath. To an animal with a sense of smell orders of magnitude more sensitive than ours, those signals are not subtle. A dog's nose contains roughly 300 million olfactory receptors. A bear's is estimated to be 7 times more sensitive than that. When a person approaches an animal in a state of heightened aggression or predatory intent, their body is chemically broadcasting it. The animal doesn't need to interpret your body language. It can smell your state before you've done anything at all. This was studied directly in a 2018 paper published in Applied Animal Behavior Science examining how horses respond to handlers in different emotional states. Handlers who were internally stressed, even when trained to mask their body language, produced measurably different stress responses in the horses than calm handlers did. The horses weren't reading performance. They were reading chemistry. Now take that capacity and apply it to a predator encounter. Not a domesticated animal, not a controlled study. A wild animal that has every reason to view you as a threat. In 2003, a wildlife researcher working in Yellowstone documented something during a wolf field survey that ended up in the literature precisely because it was so difficult to categorize. A wolf caught in a leg snare was actively lunging when the researcher approached. Classic high-stress threat response. The researcher, rather than retreating, lowered his body, broke direct eye contact, and held still. The wolf stopped lunging within roughly 90 seconds. It didn't go limp. It didn't go passive. It stopped treating the human as an active threat and held position while the trap was removed. Once freed, it stood, looked back once, and disappeared into the tree line. The researcher's note in the field report was careful. He didn't claim the wolf knew he was there to help. What he wrote was that something in the animal's threat classification system had been interrupted. The expected predatory behavior pattern from the human wasn't materializing, and the wolf appeared to update accordingly. That updating process is worth sitting with for a second because it implies something significant. It means the animal isn't running purely on fixed instinct. There's a layer of real-time evaluation happening. Input comes in, gets measured against expectation, and when expectation and reality diverge far enough, the threat classification can shift. Elephants take this further than almost any other species. They maintain individualized social memories over spans of decades. Field research in Amboseli has documented herds that behave measurably differently toward specific ethnic groups of humans. Not toward humans in general, but toward specific groups with specific histories of contact. A herd with historical exposure to poaching from one community and non-harmful contact from another will display differentiated fear responses based on clothing, scent markers, and vocal characteristics associated with each. They are not generalizing. They are remembering and applying that memory with a precision that goes well beyond basic threat detection. What happens in the body of a wild animal during a high-stakes human encounter matters here too, because the physiology is doing something that seems to conflict with pure fear response. Research published in the European Journal of Wildlife Research measured cortisol concentrations in ungulates caught in fence entanglements. The stress levels in animals that were being actively handled and freed were, in many cases, lower than in animals that had experienced gunshot trauma or vehicle collision. Not because being trapped and handled is physically less stressful, but because something in the interaction itself appeared to modulate the stress response. The researchers didn't have a clean explanation for it, but the data was consistent. The humpback whale rescue near the Farallon Islands in 2005 became one of the most documented cases of this phenomenon at scale. The whale had become entangled in hundreds of feet of crab trap line, weighted with traps wrapped through the mouth, under a pectoral fin, and around the tail. 4 divers worked around its body for over an hour, cutting through the lines with small knives. The whale held still throughout, not sedated, not immobilized, still. Diver James Mosquito described feeling the animal's eye following his movements during the work, watching what was happening. When the last rope was cut, the whale didn't flee. It began circling, then it approached each diver individually, and for several minutes, gently, slowly, it nudged them, one by one. The divers described it as deliberate. Marine biologists who reviewed the account noted that humpback whales possess spindle neurons, the same class of neurons associated with social cognition and emotional processing in humans and great apes. They were documented in cetaceans only in 2007, and their presence changed how researchers frame cetacean behavior entirely. Whether what the whale experienced constitutes gratitude in any meaningful sense is a question science can't currently answer. But the behavior itself is documented, and it doesn't fit any threat response framework. Here's what makes all of this harder to dismiss than it used to be. For most of the 20th century, attributing emotional or intentional states to animals in scientific literature was considered a methodological error. Anthropomorphism dressed up as observation. That guardrail served a purpose. It kept the field from projecting, but it also caused researchers to systematically underinterpret data that didn't fit a purely mechanistic model. The shift happened slowly and then faster in the 2000s as neurological and hormonal research tools became sophisticated enough to measure animal internal states directly, rather than inferring them from behavior alone. What that research has revealed is that the architecture for complex social and emotional processing exists in far more species than was previously assumed. The capacity to read another being's intent, to distinguish a threat from a non-threat in real time, to update that classification based on incoming behavior, is not uniquely human. It appears to be something much older, which brings the question back to where it started. Not, do animals have emotions in some abstract sense? But specifically, when you are standing in front of a wild animal, what is it actually reading? What is it picking up that you may not even know you're putting out? The evidence points toward a process that is continuous, multi-channel, and surprisingly accurate. Your approach angle, your gaze, your posture, the chemical signature of your emotional state, the behavioral pattern you're running, and critically, whether it matches the pattern of something that has come to hurt them before. They are not passive subjects in that exchange. They are evaluating, and in some cases, they are making decisions based on that evaluation that look, from the outside, remarkably like judgment. There's one more dimension to this that the research touches on but doesn't fully resolve. Animals that have been freed by humans, the whale, the wolves, documented elephants that have been removed from snares by rangers, sometimes seek out humans again afterward. Not in distress, not in need of anything, just proximity, as if something in the interaction registered as significant enough to revisit. Science can describe the behavior, it can map the neurology, but it cannot yet say what the animal is carrying forward from the encounter, what it filed the experience under, or what category of thing a human became for them in that moment. That question doesn't have an answer yet, but the fact that it's being asked seriously in peer-reviewed literature by researchers who spent careers being very careful not to overinterpret says something on its own.